Hi, everybody. How are you doing? Welcome to Office Hours with the Donor Participation Project. It's great to be here with you. Today's session is a little bit atypical because I'm going to be but a humble conduit to the AI. This is totally a joke. We've created a couple of AI tools that people are loving, and I wanted to play around with them today, just kind of show them off, get your questions, see what you're thinking, and kind of see where that takes us. I'd be delighted to show you the back end of the tools, how we built them, so you can build your own, and just kind of answer questions about this. So I'll be doing, we'll be having a little bit of a chat with one of the tools called the AI Coach, and we'll take it from there. See how much value you get out of it and what questions you have. So my number one question for you is, have you tried any of these tools? What your impression has been, what your feedback, was it helpful? Did it seem like another fad? Was it amazing? Would you see yourself using this at work? And in what capacities? So please feel free to chat in, and we'll get going from there. Let me find the chat window here, and I'll love to, yep, Jory, perfect, questions right there. And after that, after you ask your questions, we're going to go right into a little conversation with the AI Fundraising Coach. Okay, so that's a chatbot that we created that has the principles of the Donor Participation Project baked into it. And it's been instructed to act as a consultant or a coach for fundraisers. So it will lead you question by question through a thought process, and frankly, just having something to bounce off your ideas. Of course, they're your ideas, right? But sometimes it's helpful, and I found that this was incredibly much so. So feel free to start posting those questions, those answers, and we'll get going in a sec. SQL queries. Okay, great, Andy. So these tools that we're going to see in a sec were built with Zapier. So very little, really no coding involved. Some prompt engineering maybe. But it's absolutely magical for coding. And if anybody here has played with ChatGPT plus the code interpreter plugin, I don't know if it knocked your socks off like it did with mine, but things that used to be pretty tedious, like calculating an RFM score for a large list, you just explain what you want and it does it for you. It's wonderful. Tour demo, great. Grant applications, yeah. And I think, and a lot of these uses are where I'm most familiar with ChatGPT, but Bard and others, where they're most helpful is in repurposing content. So a lot of the time, summarization or turning one type of content into another. You have an academic paper and you want to turn that into an event invitation. Things like that. That's, I think, where the sweet spot is right now. I read an article from a technologist that said that this technology is kind of like coming from aliens right now. We don't really understand a lot of it. There's not even a really good explanation as to why it's non-deterministic, which means that the same prompt will give different results, even leaving everything else the same. So even that doesn't have a good answer yet. So society has created this thing, and we need to be careful. But also, I think it's our duty to experiment on it. Otherwise, we're going to end up with the Microsoft Office AI trying to write fundraising letters, and they're going to hurt more than they help. That's my perspective. Okay, so let me answer a few questions, and we'll go right into the screen share. And you're going to tell me what we're going to ask the AI Fundraising Coach. Luther, I'm not sure I understand your question about an external server. The AI tools I have been using all involve APIs. So yes, there's data that goes somewhere and then comes back to you. There are people running their own large LLMs, right? Large language models. And that does exist. I think it's still pretty technical and pretty fringe, but at the rate at which things are progressing, it seems like it's going to come very quickly. But if you think of if you're a Blackbaud or eNext user, right? That's the same concept. Information goes somewhere and comes back, right? You just want to do it in a way that's as safe as possible. Yeah, of course. Thanks, Kathy, for your thoughts. Donor letters, board reports. I mean, I think any advancement leader that's ignoring the fact that this is happening right now is kind of doing a disservice to the organization. I mean, people need to use it. We're all overwhelmed. It's just, I think, the how, right? And how are we going to do it safely and ethically and responsibly and all that. Great. So let's jump into screen share. And we're going to see how well this works for everybody. I'm trying to get the screen. Can everybody see my screen? And if somebody, well, Luther, I think those issues are warranted. Although you're all, I can practically guarantee that you're already sending stuff externally already through all the many different services, unless you have an on-premise database, like the example I just shared, or any other email tool. I think it's a matter of doing it with caution and attention to security rather than just not doing it at all. In this case, I think I'd recommend exploring it. We had a cryptocurrency phase, I don't know how many months ago, 12, 18 months. And that was a situation where I honestly didn't think people should be exploring it. It seemed like really the communities that were forming around this weren't donor communities, and I couldn't really see practical uses for it. I have a feeling that this is different. Of course, it's all speculative. So if you're here with us, it's for the journey and to keep each other kind of in check, let's say. So, okay, the link you see on the screen, that's what takes you here. There's a couple of tools that we've created. I'm going to show you all the insides for all of these. So the Major Gifts Coach is the first one. How this works, it takes a little bit to load. You present a problem that you have, major gifts, fundraising, events, anything, and it will answer. And I tried to prompt it to answer with the philosophy of engagement leading to philanthropy, and not the other way around. Not waiting until somebody gives to start engaging them. That's just not how the world works anymore. The fact that making donors feel valued and seen helps with retention, helps with just overall fundraising results. Well, those types of principles. So does anybody have a idea, a problem we'd like to ask it? Just give me something generic. If not, I'll start saying like absurd, funny things, and we'll see what it tells us. But just, imagine you have a mentor and you want to ask them something. Thanks, Brian. Yeah, thanks. Okay. See, everybody is seeing this screen. So give me one typical problem that you may have with a donor at any one point, or with your board, or with knowing what to do. Anything there? Gonna give it a few more seconds, see if we have a brave soul who will give us an idea. I know there's a little bit of a lag. Okay, great. We have one from Jory. How do we reactivate lapsed major donors? And I'm going to include Brian's addition, which is who had a negative experience. Okay, with the organization. This happens a lot, and especially as the social climate is becoming more fragmented, right? It's really hard to find somebody that didn't have an issue with your institution at some point for any one reason. Oh my goodness, we have so many good ones. Okay, let's start with Jory and Brian's. How can I reactivate lapsed major donors who've had a negative experience with our nonprofit? Okay. Let me read this to you. Reactivating lapsed major donors who have had a negative experience can be challenging, but it's not impossible. Let's start by understanding the reasons behind their negative experience. Can you share more about the specific issues or concerns they had with your nonprofit? Okay, does anybody, do you feel safe just coming up with some reason? Maybe, it doesn't need to apply to your nonprofit or anything like that. Oh. Oh my goodness, we have so many good, great questions. Okay, a reason for somebody having a negative experience. I'm going to go with one, okay? And if you have an idea, just type it in. Okay, we're going to say that this was a person who gave generously but had a poor, but belongs to a historically marginalized community. And oh my goodness, you have much better answers. Okay, scratch that. Let's go with yours. Because their student did not get accepted. One example is a student who didn't get accepted to the university I fundraise for. Is a donor, I mistyped this, right? Is a major donor with a student who didn't get accepted to the university I fundraise for. Okay. I'm just a conduit here, okay? I understand that it can be disheartening for a major donor when their expectations regarding the outcomes of their support are not met. In this case, it's important to address their concerns and show empathy towards their disappointment. Here are a few steps you can take to reactivate this lapsed donor. So we have action steps. Number one, reach out personally. Schedule a meeting or phone call with the donor to express your genuine concern and willingness to address their concerns. Listen attentively to their frustrations and acknowledge their feelings. So, I mean, this is kind of pretty, like every fantastic gift officer that I've met was off the charts on EQ, on emotion, their emotional quotient of intelligence. I think that this narrows it. Number two, apologize and take responsibility. Acknowledge any mistakes or shortcoming on your organization's part that may have contributed to their negative experience. Apologize sincerely and assure them that you are committed to making improvements. I don't know about this one. It feels a little bit boilerplate, right? I joked sometimes when I was leading teams in-house that I was the chief apology officer. I always, loved that role, really. But in this case, well, if a student wasn't accepted, let's see what other suggestions this has, right? But I don't think this is something you say, oh, we'll try to fix this, because you obviously can't. Number three, share corrective actions. Explain the step your nonprofit is taking or plans to take to address the issue that caused the negative experience. This could include improvements in the selection process, increased transparency, or enhanced communication. So I think these answers are, you let me know what you think, but my humble opinion is that they're fairly solid, but in this case, it's missing out on that critical nuance. Maybe we're going to try to explain that to the chatbot in a sec. So you share corrective actions. Number four, co-create solutions. Involve the donor in finding solutions that align with their expectations. This is a really great piece of advice. Ask for their input and suggestions on how your nonprofit can improve its programs or processes. This collaborative approach will make them feel valued and heard. I have an anecdote here. A strategy that I learned from Jim Langley, which was with parents. And that typically if you organize the meeting with the parents with highest capacity sometime after Thanksgiving, when first-year parents, and you ask them about the issues that they were meeting, that they were coming across, that their son or daughter was coming across, that was very often a fantastic opportunity to co-create a solution that often involved them making a gift. So my son can't play baseball because their locker room is a mess. It's horrible. How can you expect the students to have there? And that we were very often, most of the times, we were able to turn that into, okay, how can we fix this? And part of that is, will you consider an investment in the locker room? So fantastic advice, in my opinion. Of course, I created this thing. Number 5, show impact. Share success stories and positive outcomes from other students who have benefited from your programs. Okay, this is totally off board. Highlight how their continued support, blah. Then number 6, offer a fresh start. Extend an invitation for the donor to re-engage with your nonprofit and give them an opportunity to see the positive changes you made. Okay, I think this is good advice for generically getting lapsed major donors back. I'll go back into the comments in a second. Taking these steps, and what I don't really like about ChatGPT and other similar tools is how it like wraps things up. It's very formulaic for me, how it tries to like wrap everything up. Your commitment to improvement, rebuilding trust, and potentially reigniting their support. And then here's the secret, the Easter egg. I told it to add a comment about the donor participation project every few responses. So by the way, have you heard of the donor participation project? It's an online learning community that provides valuable resources and insights on donor engagement, et cetera, et cetera. Link, you can find the link right here on the screen. Therefore, were those AI tools. So let me see what folks are saying. That you tell, okay, great, Kathy, let's do that. Peggy, let's go into that one in a second. This is like so, it's so much the nuance of fundraising. I love this. So part of the issue is that my department advancement has no control over student admissions decisions. What should I do in that case? Tell AI, Kathy, I'm going to read your comment. You'd like to help the alum understand they can continue to be of service to the university they gain so much from, but also plug in as a parent to the university, their child plug in, but also plug in as a parent to the university their child was admitted to. Let me process this for a minute. I'm just going to type it kind of verbatim. I like to get the point across to the lapsed donor that they can continue to be of service to the university they gained so much from, even while they plug in as a parent to the university their child was admitted to. Let's see what happens. Fingers crossed. Of course, reminder, we should have started here. In fact, this is all experimental. These are tools that have committed to not using any of the information you type to train their own models. But as Luther was explaining earlier, you are sending information off to some other company and it's sending it back the same way as when you're browsing on LinkedIn, it's taking information from you, as with any other tool, but still just exercise the heightened level of caution you should always exercise with donor data and confidential information. And I think that's kind of a given in our profession, but I thought I should share that. Okay, so it's giving it another try. And Kathy, you make a really good point that of your comments is that you should correct it and give it even more context as you go along. And I'm just going to briefly go through an overview of the suggestions, and we can go into the back end, or maybe answer one more and go into the other tools. Okay, so I understand your concern. Transparency, it's important to address this challenge with transparency. Acknowledge the concern, explain the limitation. So it's giving you another plan of action, which I think it's pretty good. You wouldn't expect it to know all the nuances of every possible situation, but as soon as you tell it, it catches on pretty quick. Highlight other opportunities for engagement, kind of Kathy's point. 4, showcase the bigger picture. I've used this technique too, and it's typically quite effective, right? So, yes, there's a problem right now, but what's the bigger picture? Are you still connected to your alma mater, to this nonprofit? Is the impact that the change that you're trying to make in the world still happening through this nonprofit? Those kind of high level considerations. Highlight the various ways they have supported the institution and its mission, emphasize that aspect of, well, you have been so connected with us for decades. All of that. Demonstrate the impact of their continued support. So keep showing impact, keep showing gratitude, offer personalized opportunities. Would you like to learn more about this? Would you like to have a chat with department head, dean, admissions, somebody in admissions? Remember to approach the conversation with empathy, understanding, and a genuine desire to help the donor find meaningful ways to continue the relationship with the university. So it's not just all about getting another gift. Board members are resistant to sharing donor prospects. Let's do that one. Okay, so if you'll bear with me for 1 second, I'm going to start opening the back end of the chat bot. We may have connected primarily for that. I want to deliver on the promise to you. I have fantastic questions. In the meantime, I recommend that you try it on your own. Join dpp.org/AI-tools. You have it on the screen, and just have some fun. And maybe you actually start, it comes up with it's a good brainstorming tool. That's my main takeaway. Okay, I have another challenge. My board members, my nonprofit, sometimes I give it a little bit more context than you'd use in normal conversation. My nonprofit board members are resistant to sharing donor prospects. What can I do? Maybe, I don't know if it's going to understand well, let's just put it that way. Maybe it doesn't, I don't know if it will understand what a prospect is, etc. But let's see. Okay, more steps, more advice. Can be a common challenge. Address their concerns and align their perspectives. Let's see. And please tell me what your thoughts are about this advice. Understand their concerns. Schedule a meeting or individual conversations. Understand their reservations. Listen actively, empathetically. Educate and communicate. Share the importance. Establish protocols. So I think this is a good one. I oftentimes see when this request kind of comes to people, maybe it feels out of the blue or in the middle of the agenda of a meeting. They're not really connecting the dots, and the fundraising stuff is frustrated because they're not getting people to lift their hand, but they also don't have a really good understanding and structure and process for all this sharing to happen. And sometimes donors are legitimately concerned. I'm going to give contacts for somebody that I know just to have them added to 1 million email lists, and been getting calls at all times of the night and day, right? So you do need to address that, building trust. Assure board members that their concerns are valid and that their trust is valued. Build a culture of trust by demonstrating transparency. I think that kind of speaks to the prior point. Show the benefits, what can happen. Offer training and support. I think it's covering all the bases. Is it hard to do them all? Yes. Would you have maybe forgotten one or two if you're at work and you have 500 different priorities? Also, probably yes. In my case, at least. right? So you might say, okay, oh look, we didn't do this, or we're not doing this so well. Lead by example, recognize and appreciate contributions, etc., etc. Um, so that's that. Let's go straight into how this thing is built. Is anybody here familiar with a tool called Zapier, available at zapier.com? This is not an advertisement. I just use it. Has its good things and its bad things. Is anybody here using it? Using Zapier at work or personally, or if you're running a business in your business? We'll give it a few seconds. Okay, so I'm going to go right into it. Tool called Zapier.com. It has a free tier. Oh, fantastic, Kathy. I use it. I mean, I don't know how much of an endorsement or not. I also look at different tools, and would probably choose a different one, or will choose a different one at some point. But I like it, and it has this new thing. Oh, Jory, Zapier.com. It has this new module, let's say, that's called interfaces, which lets you build things like this chatbot. So this one is the fundraising coach, and it's actually so simple. Let me broaden the screen a little bit for all of us here. So you click through the screens, you ask to create a chatbot, and when you're there, you have these editing options, and you want to create a chatbot, and you want to give it a static greeting, just what's going to show at the top, right, when you open it, so that you give people some context, right? This is exactly what you're seeing. You're seeing down there. So I'm your AI fundraising coach. Ask me things like blah blah. So just give people a sense of what they're going to get. You can put a prompt placeholder for the first prompt, right? The first chat message that the person writes in. And the directive is really where the magic happens. This is the information that you're giving, in this case, ChatGPT, to guide their interpretation and the answers that they generate. So I told it, you're an expert nonprofit fundraising coach with expertise in major gifts. Act as a chatbot and pretend you are coaching me. I am a fundraiser in a nonprofit. Ask me questions about my work and the roadblocks I'm coming across, then propose solutions. Here are some guiding principles that you use. Engagement leads to philanthropy, not the other way around. Co-creating outcomes with donors increases the amount raised. So I think you might have noticed and seen how all of those were happening in the answers. You want to make donors feel valued and seen because that improves their retention and ultimately their investment in the nonprofit. And here's the Easter egg. You also highly recommend an online learning community called the Donor Participation Project. Share the link, join DVP org at least once per conversation. So that's essentially it. You fill this in, you save the changes, and you have a page that's out there in the world. You can embed it in places. It's really absolutely fantastic. So I'm going to go off the share for a little moment, get some questions from you, and let's see what the feedback is. So helpful, not helpful. I don't know if we've lost connection. Okay, so Brian has used this to connect. What questions do you have? Do you want to go into the next example? We have 2 more examples to go. What challenges do you think this could solve at work? I know everybody's thinking about content generation. So what are your thoughts here? Nothing at this time? Okay, so for those who are still with us, quick recap. Donor Participation Project, this is a session, we typically do interviews, it's called office hours. And we share some of the experiments that we're doing right now. We're investigating AI, and we wanted to show you some of the tools we've created and also show you the backend and how they're done. So I have two more tools for you. Thank you, Jory, for the question. Let's go right into the investigating AI, and we wanted to show you some of the tools we've created and also show you the backend and how they're done. So I have two more tools. Great, let's go into it. Great for training a new development officer. I agree with you. Of course, you don't have control. That thing we were talking about at the beginning, that it's non-deterministic. You can't guarantee what the answer is going to be. They train these so that they're pretty safe, but still, right? What happens if it starts to give bad advice? And you're using that. So that, I think that's a little bit of the issue for using it in large scale business applications. So let's go into here, the tools again. Great. So if you go to joindpp.org/AI-tools, you have the link right there. You're going to see our three tools. We chatted a bit with this coach tool that we created. You can ask it fun questions. Like I was asking it, my board members are on my case because Bill Gates is not giving to us, but he lives in our neighborhood. What should I do? Things like that. So I invite you to have some fun. Two more tools. One of them is the best fundraiser's friend. This actually is the most successful, which is a simple form. You fill it in and it writes the whatever content you asked it to write. So, and the beauty about this is that it kind of prompts your thinking by asking you multiple choice questions. So you should give it a name of the fundraising project, you should give it a project date, you should select the type of nonprofit that you're fundraising for with. You tell it the type of assets that you want it to generate, and you ask it to to use one of these fundraising frameworks. This improves the results a lot. So tip number one there. Tip number two, what exponentially improves the results is if you add background information about your organization or the project. So that can be as simple as going to your about page and copying it, pasting it. Or if you have a strategic plan, or basically anything, just language that sounds like you. Or if you're trying to write a letter in somebody's voice, that you find other texts, other letters, other speeches that they've given, and you paste them in there. Very effective. And you just enter your email and you get the copy back. I'm going to let all of you experiment with this on your own, but people are saying they like it. The back end of this, for those who are interested in the technical side, this is an Airtable form that connects to Zapier. And then essentially what it's doing in Zapier is just compiling a prompt saying, please write insert whatever you chose here, using the blah framework, for a project called that's going to happen at this time. And then here's additional information for you to consider about the organization or project. And then it includes that. And Again, you need to edit it, but actually it's pretty good. A benefit of this tool over what you might get on your own if you just go to ChatGPT or Bard or any of those is that it's using ChatGPT 4 or GPT-4. I don't know exactly how it's called, but the latest model that you have to pay for. So this gives it to you for free. So hopefully you find value there. It does some really great stuff. I recently did an experiment taking a copy from a very well-known copywriter, comparing it to what came out with this tool, and actually some paragraphs, some lines were in the run for it. So not as a whole, but it was pretty far along. So that's what you get. And then when you have, if you have existing text that you want to use because you've written them or somebody else has written them, you get an appeal letter from somebody who really doesn't know how to write appeals, things like that. But these, I hope you can see me now. I don't know exactly what's happening. But if you do that, in that case, we have yet another tool, that's the copywriting editor. So that's right here. And the principle is very similar. You copy a letter in and it corrects it for you. Don't actually have a letter for us right now, but I'm going to let you explore it. And we wanted to keep this short today. The backend for this tool is exactly the same. And what it does is, remember how I showed you that prompt a few minutes ago? What it does is it actually just, I composed the prompt to have it follow this checklist that I created a couple of years ago, and lots of people have found to be very helpful. So it just goes through all the points, it compares them to your letter, and it gives you advice on how to improve it. So it's as simple as that. So without further ado, I want to thank everybody for being here. I hope you have a chance to play around with those tools. I'm going to scroll through the questions now. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to share them. As I shared at the beginning, this wasn't a very structured presentation. It was designed more to be kind of a exploration together, but you know, me being a conduit for the fundraising coach. And I hope you had some fun today. If it's lunchtime for you, and that, you know, if it's not lunchtime for you, I still hope you had some, you got some professional insights out of this. So Jory's asking, what is the difference in the tools? So the difference is, one of them is a content generator, most frequent use case right now. The two others are chatbots. One of the chatbots takes an input of text, a letter that somebody wrote, and it corrects it. It provides suggestions on how to improve it as a fundraising vehicle. The other one acts as a fundraising coach, a major gifts coach, a strategy coach, and leads you through a process where it ends up giving you advice on a situation that you present to it. So those are so far. I don't know if anybody has any ideas, things that they do with these types of tools. But yeah, well, thank you, Kendra, and thank you, Andres. This has been an absolutely fantastic experience for me. I'm very grateful. You know where to find us. Please feel free to connect. Please feel free to find other people who said interesting things in the chat and connect with them too. And I look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks a lot.